Right, it's Carl here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, GBHBL.com. And I have the distinct pleasure of talking with Evan, the vocalist of progressive, melodic, folk-infused death metal Wilderun, who a few weeks ago re-released their exceedingly great third album, Veil of Imagination. Evan, first things first, how are you doing?
Doing well, man. Thank you for having me on. It's good to talk. And thanks for the kind words. We are very happy that the album's back out, that it's finally out for people to actually buy and get their hands on after many months. So
that's been a fascinating journey. But before we get to that, I got to ask, it's the elephant in the room that every interviewer has to talk about at the start. How have you been keeping busy during the year that is 2020?
Yeah, it's been a weird one. I think, trying my best to stay productive. We're trying to, as a band, we're still just trying to do anything that we can in the meantime, which is like, I would say half of that is just purely musical, trying to continue to write music and trying to just, and just trying to keep in the grind as best as we can. But then also just prepare for 2021 as best as we can to sort of, make up for this year. We kind of I think everyone's just accepted this year's shot. This year is just kind of it's just a bit of a wash. So I think we've all made peace with that. And now we're like, okay, it is what it is. And what can we do to make sure the next year is even better? It just makes up for it. So, we're writing, we've been working on new material. We've been, doing various things like we did a quarantine kind of acoustic video is a way to pass the time, I guess. And that's about it.
Do you end up feeling like pressure when you sort of see other bands, I don't know, ones with, I guess, high production, like someone like Devin Townsend going all out with these massive streams and all that, and you're sitting there thinking, shit, we kind of have to do something.
Yeah, for sure. We're trying not to put too much pressure on ourselves, because I think that we understand. I think most of our fans understand, and most music fans understand, that this is so unprecedented right now that, everyone's been put in a bit of a tight spot, a bit of a strange situation. So we're trying not to stress too much about it. But it would be nice if we had the budget of a Devin Townsend or a whatever, a big band, if we could, be able to do something with a bit more high production value. The only thing we did was that acoustic video, which was just from our home studios. We have varying levels of recording equipment. I have very limited stuff. Dan and Wayne have a little bit better equipment than I do, but still, nothing wildly fancy. But we still just do what we can. We do see all these bands doing the live stream shows. That's been like a big trend lately that we've been trying to figure out if that's something we can do. I'm not sure yet, because we all live in Wayne lives in California. Me and Dan and Joe are in Massachusetts. John is in North Carolina. So we'd have to one of us would at least have to drive a few states over for that to happen. And but maybe the end of this year or something, if we have some time, if we have the resources to do it, it's something that's still kind of like on the table. So yeah, we'll see.
The option's there, and I hate the idea that everyone might start to feel this pressure that you have to reach this expectation because, hey, you've been in lockdown, you must have used that time correctly, and it's almost unfair, particularly when you are re-releasing and doing all the things that requires around that album.
Right. Yeah. It's been fortunate that at least we had this re-release set up, and luckily, luckily the label kept everything going as planned when everything hit. We had like a moment where we were like, oh no, like, is this going to even affect that somehow? But luckily it didn't. And so that's been at least a thing happening to keep us busy and keep us like in the minds of our fans and people, and keep the word spreading, even though we can't play shows, even though our tours have been postponed. At least that's happening to keep things going.
And during this period, are there certain things, like ways of working or doing things in regards to the band, that you were forced into doing because you couldn't leave or meet up and so on, that you think work and you've enjoyed enough that you would continue afterwards? Or would it just be once the opportunity arises to effectively revert back to how you used to work together?
Well, we're in a bit of a strange position in the sense that we've actually always done things somewhat remotely, like, because like I said, two of our members are out of state. So I think in some ways, we've almost been nicely prepared for the situation. At least in some ways, we do like we'll do a monthly, Skype meeting with all five of us, and just to keep caught up on things. And then we've been working on some new music, and we've been doing some like remote drum demos with like an electric drum kit and sending that back and forth with ideas. And so that's been, I would say that's been somewhat new. We've never done as much remote like music making and like demo making as we have recently. So that's been good, because we, like I said, we always have done stuff somewhat remotely, but not quite for like this long of a period of time. Like usually by now we would have done more things in person, but so it has kind of forced our hand a little bit to delve even further into that way of working remotely and just getting more used to it and getting more comfortable with it. So yeah, I would say that, and if we can keep using those methods working into the future, I could see that helping our productivity for sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Veil of Imagination, originally released late 2019. And is it correct that a bunch of labels basically turned you down, forcing you to self-release?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a way to put it. Yeah. I mean, we had talked to probably maybe like 3 labels or so. We had reached out to a few more, and I think maybe around 2 or 3 got back to us. And yeah, it was always sort of the same situation where we'd be talking to like one A&R rep at the label, and they would be interested in the material and really dig it, and then kind of tell us, oh, let me go bring this to the team and I'll get back to you. And then we wouldn't really hear anything back for a month, and then they'd come back and tell us that the whole team didn't go for it, because I guess that's how, I mean, it makes sense. That's how these things work. They got to make sure the whole team signs on to it. So, yeah, I'm not really sure why. I guess it just didn't really seem to be, I mean, I have to imagine that anytime you bring a label something where the songs are average of 8-9 minutes long and a lot of different parts, it's maybe a little bit more of a risk. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of great metal bands that do that, but maybe it's not quite as many. Maybe the majority is still doing more shorter songs, and in today's day and age, I mean, the consumption of media has become shorter and shorter and quicker, and I can imagine that more long, patient sort of music is maybe a little bit scarier to sign on to. So, but I actually don't know if that's the reason why. For all I know, there's a totally separate reason why they didn't end up going with it. But that would be my guess. So yeah, we just after about, and that's why it took us so long to release the record, is because we recorded it in February and March of 2018. So it's been a long time, and we sat on it for so long because we were just trying to shop it, because we had those couple people reach out to us, and we were kind of waiting on them, that kept pushing the timeline back, and eventually we just decided, okay, we've been sitting on this for way too long. We have to get it out there, and then and because it would just start to be ridiculous, and we needed to move on to new material.
Yeah.
And but then we released it on our own, and that did really well. And then about 2-3 months later, bunch of people just started reaching out again, because I guess that's what, I don't know if it's that it like showed them that, hey, people actually like this, like it's doing well, or if it just was maybe enough buzz to get them to actually sit down and listen to a full song. I'm not really sure what did it, but something about the self-release made them actually pay attention. So that was it was a little satisfying. It was a bit like, yeah,
Told you.
like, yeah, thanks.
I generally found that story there and what I'd read before and kind of staggering, because in my eyes, and from what seems to be the general consensus, it is an incredible release. You talk about being 8-9 minute long tracks, roughly about an hour over 8 tracks, and it's kind of like, yeah, fair enough, people want that quick consumption. But these albums like yours are the ones where you turn off the lights, you turn off your phones, you spend that hour with it, and you come out of it, I think majority of people incredibly satisfied. But I created this image of your album was sitting on an in and out tray at a label somewhere and with a pile of others, and it was a matter of trying to get to it. And then when the buzz started, it was like, oh yeah, blow the dust off this album. All right, let's listen to it now.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably it, which is why, like, I hold no ill will towards any of the labels. Like, I'm sure that they get so much music every day that they're just inundated. They have to prioritize what they check out, and so there's no hard feelings with anyone who didn't sign on to it. I'm sure it was just a matter of logistics and a matter of time. So I'm just happy that eventually it did get into the right people's hands. So.
Well, I would see it now as well that anyone like that who may have passed up on it for whatever reason, they missed out, and obviously Central Media are the ones who've got hold of it. So how did that come about, basically, with Central Media?
We actually got the email from the first person that contacted us was a guy named Mike Gitter, who's an A&R rep at Century, and it was kind of funny timing, actually, is that we got to do the 70,000 tons of metal cruise at the beginning of this year, and for anyone who's been on any cruise probably knows that, like, you don't really have any reception to your phone or any Wi-Fi unless you pay a lot of money to go use go to one room and pay way too much money. So anyways, none of us had signal or Wi-Fi for 4 days straight, and it was actually during that time that Mike emailed us. So it was we literally, when we the boat docked at the end of the fest, and we stepped foot on land, we all turned on our phones, and we all saw the email from, it was pretty much the first thing we saw as soon as we got off the ship. So it was a pretty nice surprise. It was a nice, a very nice kind of cap on what was already a very good trip. So and then yeah, he had reached out to us, and then it's just a few weeks of conversations after that before we decided to sign. So yeah, pretty straightforward, but it was interesting timing.
It was this wonderful. It's wonderful. And obviously it comes with a vinyl release as well. And your album artwork is stunning. But on that vinyl, whoa, it looks amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. We're that was the work of Adrian Cox. He's an amazing artist, and just super glad to finally get it on vinyl. Super glad to get anything on vinyl. This is the first time we've ever had vinyl of any sort, so it's just like. And our fans have been so patient. I feel so bad that we haven't gotten vinyl out for this long, but it's so expensive to put down that initial down payment, and it's such a long, arduous process, and you have to put down so much money to get them printed. So I apologize to everyone out there who's been waiting for this long, but it's very satisfying that it's finally out. So.
And it's one of those things that's totally worth the wait.
Yeah.
How have you been paying attention to the reaction? Is it something you tend to look at, like in regards not just in reviews, we're talking about comments on YouTube, social media and stuff like that, or is it something you kind of just steer away from?
I think as time has gone on, I've had to learn to shut it out a little bit more, for a couple reasons. Just purely logistically, we've gotten more fans and more comments and more reviews and stuff over the course of the last year. It's definitely started to ramp up a lot. So part of it's just a time thing. I've just stopped having enough time to read every single comment and review or especially respond. Because I used to, when we were first starting for the first few years of the band, I really valued and still do value fan interaction and trying to, interact with them as much as I can and get, respond to feedback and try to, just make sure everyone feels paid attention to, because I do value anyone who listens to us and supports us. I value so much, and I want to show that in any way that I can. But it's become more difficult as it's increased. But it's also just been, for me personally, I have noticed that as it ramps up and as I spend more time on social media, it starts to wear on you a little bit mentally and psychologically. I don't personally have a Facebook account or a Twitter account or anything. I deactivated my personal Facebook account maybe 2 years ago, and I haven't ever gone back. And that's just sort of for my own mental health. It's just like I find that too much digital media for me personally overwhelms me, and it starts to make me feel a little down and just a little bit disconnected. So I personally had to, because of that, also disconnect a little bit with the Wilderun social media. Like we take turns. Like I'll do it sometimes, or John, our drummer, handles a lot of the Instagram stuff, and a couple of the other guys will randomly jump on Facebook and take over sometimes. So it's been parsed out a little bit to make it a little easier. But I have had to dial it back a little bit just for my own mental clarity, I think. So I always worry that I hope that, now that every single comment isn't being answered or responded to, I hope no one takes offense to that or takes it personally. Anytime it seems like it's a serious question, or if we get a private message, or if it's something important, I'll absolutely try to respond to it. But I want to make sure no one feels, neglected. But there's a balance I've had to achieve lately, for sure.
I'm glad that you were able to achieve this balance to some degree, because the days of your job in the band was to get on stage, play that music, chuck an album or EP out, and then try and sell some merch is not quite the same. Now you have to be active across not just like one social media account, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, if you want to do that. So many.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you got a balance.
Yeah, I mean it's still a work in progress. We're still trying to achieve that balance, but we're starting to learn. And I think it's just, if anything, it's just starting to become more comfortable with not responding to everything and not feeling guilty. Like I think a lot of times I'll just feel guilty if I don't respond to every single comment, but I've had to learn to let that go and hope that people will understand. And I think most of our fans will understand.
100% agree. I think the majority do, and that's good enough. That's what matters. And you already said, we're going to go back a bit. You already said, so this album isn't new for you. You recorded this in 2018, which I still find amazing. But for many, it's a brand new album. Many who didn't even know that it was released late 2019. Right. But you're the artist, you're the guys that created it. So while it's new for someone like me and many others, you've been sitting with it for such a long time. Do you feel as strongly about it now as you did back then? Or because you're an artist, have you started to pick away at it and start to go, oh, not too happy here, not too happy there?
Oh, well, I think I've always been doing that. I definitely am guilty of being way too picky and way too. I can go down my own kind of rabbit holes of picking apart our music. Like it's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's true that you almost never finish a record. You just have to say you have to walk away from it, that sort of thing. So, and I even had that the day we finished. There was things that if I would have had my way, I probably would have kept digging at it. But A, we didn't have the funds to keep doing that. And B, sometimes you start hitting a point of diminishing returns where you can start losing objectivity and start tearing things apart. And then you find out that you shouldn't have messed with it like a few weeks down the road. Anyways, so I still hear those things nowadays. And if anything, actually, I would say that I feel better about it now than I did the day we walked out of the studio, because I've sort of come to peace with those those few nitpicky things that I just was so upset at the time that we didn't get to, and that the rest of the band, most of my other band members were like, dude, it's fine, stop, like, let it go. But like, and I was just like, yeah, but if we had like 2 more hours, I could have fixed that one thing. But I've sort of looked back on it now with gained perspective and been like, oh, it's fine. It doesn't, like, you know, in the moment when you're in the studio, you get so down in the zone where you think every tiny little detail is going to make a world of difference, and then you gain perspective and you're like, it's cool. It's not a big deal. So if anything, I would, in a weird way, say I feel better about it now than I did 2 years ago, which is sort of interesting.
I love that. I love that. And you must be as well at this stage, kind of sick and tired of talking about it.
I mean, you know what's funny is that I think because we recorded it and then we sat on it for a year and a half, like, we almost sort of forgot, like, or we like took our minds off of it for so long that when we did finally release it, it was like this nice little reunion with it. Like, it was like we set it out of our minds completely for a year as we tried, at least musically. And then once we released it, it was a nice little reunion with the album. And so, I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm sick of talking about it. I'm still cool with it. Although I will say that from a purely creative, compositional music standpoint, I'm very much in the mode of next album. I am musically past Veil of Imagination for sure.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, yeah. I won't go on much longer about Veil of Imagination, except to ask, why cover Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son? Is it a track in regards to relevance to the band, or was it just something you thought that fits because it's quite a bit of an epic?
I'd say that the latter. I'd say that it was. I mean, we're all, you know, we all are Iron Maiden fans to varying degrees, but and I think that, like any metal fan, or like most metal fans, it's probably something that you've been familiar with for a while. But I think the reason why we went for this track was because first of all, it's always fun to cover something that, like, most people will be familiar with, because they'll know the original song, so they'll be interested, hopefully, to hear how you've done it. But that track in particular, it was, you know, I mean, most of Wilderun's music is very lengthy and dramatic, and, you know, has a lot of different layers to it. And I would say that of all the Iron Maiden songs, I think Seventh Son is probably one of, if not the most epic, or at least it's a top contender. And so it just felt appropriate. You know, it just felt like, first of all, it's in line with what we're already doing compositionally, but also there's a lot of room to. I mean, we definitely gave it the Wilderun treatment, so to say. We even though there are parts of it that are pay homage to Iron Maiden, there's a lot of it that we just took and just made it our own, and just kind of treated it as if it was another track on Veil, but just with a different songwriter. Yeah, so that track it just felt like there was a lot of room for creativity and able to give it that Wilderun sort of dynamic sound. So yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Yeah,
I'm glad. It's a great cover. I love that it keeps the core of the track. You can hear what it is. You know it's Iron Maiden, but it is, as you said, very, very in keeping with the tone, the sound, not just of the band, but the album, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, luckily we had Dan Swano do the mix, so that made sure that it kind of kept in line with a similar sound. And yeah, I've said this before, but I think it's fun to, when bands take another band's song, but then try to fit it into their own mold and do what they do, like, and then it becomes this sort of interesting hybrid and merging of two worlds that would otherwise not exist, you know, if it weren't for the original song, but then your different style of arranging music, and it kind of, I just always think that's more interesting than doing a straight cover. So absolutely. Right, aside from music, so moving away from your talent and what's obviously in your soul, what motivates you? What kind of gets you excited outside of music? Ooh, you know, it's hard to say because it's like uh, I've been doing music for so long that like I've kind of music has become just like everything that I do that like I don't even I almost have a hard time even knowing how to contextualize it without music anymore. Like that question is just kind of like my brain just kind of shuts off and I'm like, is it because music has just kind of become the waking, breathing sort of part of my life now. But I would say um, I would say if I can get just a bit more general and vague with my answer, just trying to do something that feels like, and this might kind of sound corny, but just regardless of if it's music, just feeling like you're doing something that affects someone, other people in a emotional and perhaps profound way, and that doesn't necessarily have to be music, but music's what I know how to do, so that's the best way I can know how to do it. I think just trying to I would never, even though I love music on my own and I can just sit in my own room and write and just live in my own world for hours on end. I don't think I would probably have I don't think I would have enough drive if that was all I was doing all the time. I think the fact that we're trying to do something that touches people and seems to emotionally resonate with people is probably what really keeps everything going. And again, so I apologize that I can't stay away from music when I talk about it, but I guess what I mean is even if I wasn't a musician and even if that wasn't what I was doing, I got to imagine that would be the driving factor. Trying to do something that reaches out to at least a few other people and affects them in an emotional way. And if I wasn't playing music, hopefully I could do that in some other way. So I know that's kind of a very vague, generalized answer, but that's the best I got.
It beats the another answer of being just like I like to play games or I watch a horror movie and stuff like that. And it's like
yeah, I do those things too. I would say that separately on my own free time, I do play games. I do watch horror movies. Okay. I don't know. It's always hard to say. So it's always hard to say how much those things motivate me because I think that's why I didn't jump to that answer, because I always find that as much as I love film, I love video games, I love a bunch of other things, but it's always, I never can quite tell if those things are directly affecting the music or directly affecting like my motivation. They're just things I like, and then maybe in retrospect I'll figure out that they motivated me in some way. But I think while I'm doing those activities, they're just things I like doing.
Step away from the music, a chance, I guess, to switch off your brain almost.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. I've been so inundated by music my whole life that I think that when I'm doing any other things, I'm not trying to connect them to music. I'm just living in a different world for a little bit. And actually, but film and games are actually that because I have zero ability in either of those things, that I can enjoy them and just be a consumer without trying to think about, oh, what am I going to do with this? It just sort of escape. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I got to ask then, what are you playing at the moment?
I am actually I'm about 3 years late on this, but I'm finally playing Breath of the Wild for the Switch, the Legend of Zelda game, which is incredible. I love video games, but I've always been a couple years behind. I think that the music career kind of kept pushing me back a little bit behind the times, but I just got Breath of the Wild, and it's a pretty incredible game. It's one of the most expansive, epic games I've ever seen. It's almost overwhelming, but it's been a really good one.
It's quite a sharp shock to the system if you grew up playing the Zeldas of old, even the Nintendo 64 stuff, Ocarina and Majora's Mask. It's such a, as you say, wow, massive.
Yeah, it was like, it took me maybe 3 or 4 hours to really adjust to it. Like when I first started, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, because I grew up with Ocarina of Time and all that, and as soon as I started this game, I was like, so overwhelmed by it. It was so massive that I almost like got nervous and shut it down. But I kept going for a few hours, and once I got used to it, I totally just got lost in it. And it's beautiful. It's not only a fun and an impressive game, but it's just beautiful. Like the artwork and the music is really captivating. So yeah, good stuff.
Fantastic. And I'll go to the other one, because horror is another major facet we cover as a massive horror movie fan myself. Anything you've watched recently worth recommending?
Oh, recently. I haven't watched anything super recently. The last couple of years, I've definitely been a big Ari Aster fan. I was a big fan of Hereditary and Midsommar. I really like his directing style. He has kind of an interesting take on the horror genre that's very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very stark. It's very sort of a blunt way of presenting horror, but also very real and emotionally captivating in a way that I haven't seen many other horror directors do. So yeah, both of those movies really stuck out in my head. So those are the first things that came to mind.
Fantastic. Right, before you go then, you already mentioned that you're obviously working on new music. Your mind's focused on what will come next for Wilderun, and preparing for 2021. Can you offer any insight into what potentially you might be looking at trying to do for 21? Is it simply a matter of getting out on tour as much as possible? Would we see a new album in 2021, or would it be potentially 2022?
Well, definitely touring for sure. Like I would say that the main goal is to tour. I think almost any bands who's been, suffering this year, that's the main thing, is just try to book as many shows as we're able to whenever we are able to. It's hard to say when specifically that will be, but that's number one goal, is just getting out on the road, because we sort of, in a slightly unfortunate way, I think we sort of got robbed of our Veil of Imagination tour cycle. I mean, luckily we had a little mini tour right when we did the self-release, and then we were lucky enough to get on the cruise, 70,000 tons cruise. But besides that, any other Veil of Imagination touring has been non-existent. So I think we hopefully make up for that in some way. And then as far as the record goes, I really don't know. That's your guess is as good as mine. If we, I would say that if we could get it out next year, that would be amazing, and I would love that, just because it was 4 years in between the second and third records, so we could make up for that somehow. I would be stoked on that, but I definitely am not going to guarantee that, because we always make sure that the last thing we want to do is rush our records, and I know that we would be very unsatisfied if we did such. So we'll see. That's a open question right now.
Absolutely, watch this space. And in my opinion, 2020 is such a write-off that when it comes to 2021, you've got to make up for all the stuff you weren't able to do for Veil of Imagination. So that's fine. Just crack on with that. That's what we want.
Exactly.
Evan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/GBHBL, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?